Commander Daniel Fletcher stood in the center of the throne room, his daughter Emma holding his hand. The massive ship had welcomed them aboard with grand gestures and empty promises. The walls around them glowed with strange purple light. The air felt cold despite the temperature reading at normal levels. The delegation towered above the humans. These creatures were not like anything Earth had ever encountered. Their skin was thick and gray like steel. Their eyes were black pools without whites or pupils. They had 4 arms, each one capable of crushing a human skull without effort. The tallest among them was Commander Horn, the leader of the entire collective. Daniel squeezed Emma's hand gently. She was 7 years old, small and curious, her eyes wide with wonder at the strange technology around her. This was supposed to be a peaceful meeting. Earth had sent its best diplomat with his family to show them that humans were not aggressive. The plan was simple: show them we are peaceful, make allies, join the galactic community. Lieutenant Brooks stood to Daniel's left, her hand resting on her communication device. Doctor stood to his right, holding a gift box filled with Earth items. These 3 adults had trained for months. They knew what to say and how to say it. They had studied culture, their ways, their values. They believed this meeting would change everything. Horn rose from his massive throne and descended the steps. His movements were slow and deliberate. Each footstep shook the ground. 7 feet tall, with muscles that seemed to be carved from stone, he represented everything powerful about the race. His voice rumbled like an earthquake when he finally spoke. "Humans, you come to my ship and speak of peace. You bring your weak child to prove you care about innocent life. You expect us to believe you are worthy of joining galactic civilization." Daniel kept his expression calm. He had prepared for this. "Commander Horn, we come with respect and hope. Our people have developed in isolation, but we are ready to join the greater community of species. We offer friendship and trade." Horn's black eyes fixed on Emma. The child felt the weight of his stare and stepped closer to her father. Something changed in the alien's expression. His 4 hands clenched into fists. "You are unpredictable," Horn said, his voice dropping lower. "We have studied your species for 3 cycles. You are violent. You wage wars against yourselves. You destroy your own world. You value individual survival above the collective good. You protect the weak instead of letting them perish. You feel emotions that cloud judgment. You are everything that a civilized species should not be." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. This was not the conversation they had planned. "Commander, our values make us strong. We protect each other because—" "Silence," Horn interrupted. He turned to his guards. The massive aliens in black armor stepped forward, their weapons humming with energy. "You are a threat, an uncontrolled variable. The collective cannot permit such unpredictable creatures to exist in our galaxy. You will be eliminated, this very moment." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. His hand moved faster than thought. She hit the communication device, screaming a code word into it. Alarms began to wail throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the throne room. The guards moved toward them with terrible speed. Daniel grabbed Emma and ran. Doctor shouted something behind him, but Daniel could not hear over the alarms. His military training took over. He knew every exit from this room because he had studied the schematics. He ran toward the nearest corridor, lifting Emma into his arms as he moved. Behind him, he heard weapon fire, the sound of plasma bolts hitting metal walls. The air smelled like burned circuits, was shooting at the guards, giving them time to escape. Daniel wanted to go back for her, but she was shouting at him to keep moving. The corridors of the ship were wide and tall. Everything was built for creatures much larger than humans. Daniel ran through twisting passages, Emma holding tight around his neck. He could hear the heavy footsteps of pursuing guards behind them. The ship's alarms continued their horrible wailing. He found an intersection and turned sharply. Emma made a small sound of fear but did not cry out. Good girl, Daniel thought. Smart girl. She understood something was very wrong. Then Daniel spotted it. A maintenance shaft with an open grating, too narrow for the larger aliens to follow but just wide enough for a human child. He skidded to a stop and looked at Emma. Her small face was pale with fear. "Emma, listen to me," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "You need to hide in there, stay quiet, do not come out until I come back for you." "Daddy, no," Emma whimpered. "I want to stay with you." Behind him, the footsteps grew louder. Daniel could see the shadow of the first guard turning the corner. "Now, Emma, do it now, hide." He pushed her gently toward the maintenance shaft. Emma crawled inside without arguing. Daniel pulled the grating shut behind her just as the first guard appeared. The guard was massive, easily 10 feet tall, its armor gleaming in the fluorescent light. It raised its weapon. Daniel did not hesitate. He threw a metal container at the guard and ran in the opposite direction. The guard fired. The bolt missed but hit the wall behind him, leaving a smoking crater. Daniel ran faster, away from Emma, drawing the guards with him. He did not know if he would survive this day. He did not know if or made it out. But he knew that Emma was hidden, alone in the darkness of a maintenance shaft, waiting for a father who might never return. Behind him, he heard more guards arriving. The hunt was on. And somewhere on this massive ship, one small human child was learning that the universe was not a safe place, that not all creatures respected life, that peace was a luxury the weak could not always afford. The collective had made its choice, and humanity would learn what it meant to be hunted by beings who saw your very existence as a threat. Was not a soldier. He was a biologist and aboard the human research vessel, the Pride of Earth. He had been studying behavior patterns through long-range sensors for weeks. Was 34 years old, lean and sharp-eyed, with a mind that worked faster than most people's mouths could speak. He was the kind of person who asked dangerous questions and then actually went looking for dangerous answers. When the alarms sounded throughout the flagship was in the observation bay recording data on military formations. He heard the alarm frequency change. His communication device buzzed with priority messages from Commander Fletcher's team. Attack, betrayal, humans under fire. Most people would have moved towards safety. That was logical, that was wise, did the opposite. He grabbed his equipment pack and his portable plasma cutter, a tool meant for research and sample collection. Then he started moving toward the danger. He could not get to the main diplomatic section directly. They had sealed most passages, but knew the ship's layout better than anyone else on the human team. He had spent 3 weeks mapping every corridor, every shaft, every connection. He knew where the guards would be concentrated and where they would not. He moved through a workers' section, past confused technicians who were following lockdown procedures. None of them tried to stop him. He was just one small human and they had bigger concerns. Ran through passages that grew narrower and darker. His human eyes adjusted better than eyes to dim light. Small advantages added up. The sounds of weapon fire grew louder as he approached the diplomatic section. Could hear the specific hum of plasma weapons. He could count the number of different weapon operators by their firing patterns. At least 20 armed guards had been deployed. Maybe more. Commander Fletcher and his team were heavily outnumbered. Found the entrance to a maintenance access near the diplomatic corridor. He forced the panel open using his plasma cutter. The tool was designed for careful precision work, cutting through sample containers. Here, he used it to force open a sealed hatch. He cut through the lock mechanism and pulled the hatch open. Inside, he heard something, not the sound of fighting, not footsteps, something smaller. A child's breathing, frightened, alone. Moved toward the sound. He found her in the maintenance shaft, crouched in the darkness, her hands shaking. Emma Fletcher, 7 years old, the daughter of the human commander. She should have been safe in the quarters. Instead, she was here, hidden in darkness, terrified. Emma said softly, crawling into the shaft with her. "My name is, I work with your father. I am here to help you." Emma looked at him with red, teary eyes. "Daddy put me here," he said to hide. "Your father is very smart," said. He checked his equipment. Plasma cutter, communication device, a medical kit, emergency rations, not much. He wanted to keep you safe. I'm going to help him do that. "Are the scary things gone?" Emma asked. "No," said honestly. "They are still here, but we are going to move now. We need to get to the escape pods. Do you know where they are?" Emma shook her head. Of course she did not. She was 7, but knew. He had memorized every section of this ship. The escape pods were in Sector 7, 3 levels down. To get there, they would have to move through active combat zones. Took Emma's hand and helped her out of the maintenance shaft. She was small and light. He could carry her if necessary. But first he needed to move quietly. Every second counted. The guards would be searching systematically. They would find this area eventually. He led Emma through a series of narrow passages, moving slowly and carefully. At one point, they heard guards moving through the main corridor, pushed Emma into a recessed doorway and covered her mouth gently with his hand. She was trembling but silent. The guards passed without seeing them. They reached a stairwell, lifted Emma and carried her down 3 levels. His legs burned with effort. His breathing came hard, but he kept moving. down, 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 toward the escape pods, toward safety. Behind them heard an alarm sound, different frequency. The guards had found Emma's hiding spot. They knew she was moving. They would expand their search pattern. Time was running out. Quickened his pace, no longer worrying about silence. Speed mattered more now. He ran through corridors, Emma in his arms, his plasma cutter in his free hand. He did not know what he would do if he encountered guards, probably lose, but he would try anyway. The corridor signs told him he was getting close. Sector 7 appeared on the wall display. Escape pods were 2 more sections away, 1 more turn, 1 more corridor. Then heard it, heavy footsteps, multiple guards coming from the direction of the escape pods. Skidded to a halt, he turned quickly and made a choice. There was another way, longer, more dangerous, but it might work. He ran toward the engineering section, away from the escape pods, away from safety. Behind him, the guards saw him. They shouted in their harsh, alien language, weapons powered up, but they were far away and was moving fast. He rounded a corner and kept running. He had made a choice, not the safe one, not the logical one, but the one that made sense to him. He could not go directly to the escape pods because guards were waiting there. So he would lead the guards away from that direction. He would buy Emma time, knew the engineering section better than most human crew members. He had spent hours here studying the ship's power systems, the reactor, the magnetic containment fields that kept the ship's energy stable. As he ran with Emma, his mind was working faster than his legs could carry him. He needed a place to make a stand, a place where his knowledge gave him advantage. The engineering section had limited guards. Most of the military was searching the diplomatic quarters and main passages. Burst through the sealed door into the reactor chamber, Emma still in his arms. The hum of the massive reactor filled his ears. The floor vibrated beneath his feet. Set Emma down gently in a protected alcove behind a large column of machinery. "Stay here," he whispered. "Do not move, do not make sound. No matter what happens, you stay hidden." Emma nodded, her small face pale with fear and exhaustion. Did not wait for her response. He moved to the main control console. His hands flew across the interface. He had studied these systems, not in detail, not enough to become an expert, but enough to know what would happen if he overloaded the magnetic containment system. The guards burst through the door behind him. There were 5 of them, their armor gleaming, their weapons raised. One of them shouted commands in the harsh language. Did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. "Surrender, drop your weapon, lay down on the ground." Looked at them, then he looked back at the console. His fingers touched the override sequence. "You want to know something about humans?" called out. His voice was steady. His hands were not shaking. "You think we are weak because we care about each other. You think we are stupid because we would die for our children. But I am about to show you something. I am about to show you what happens when a human being has nothing left to lose." Enter the final command. The magnetic containment system began its shutdown sequence. Alarms screamed through the chamber. The reactor's hum changed pitch, a dangerous, angry pitch. The guards fired. Their weapons were powerful. A single bolt could burn through steel, but it dropped to the ground the moment they fired. The bolts passed over him and struck the machinery behind him. Explosions bloomed across the reactor chamber. The guards were confused. They were used to fighting enemies who stood and fought back in traditional ways. They were not used to humans who would bring down the entire section rather than surrender. Ran toward the secondary power junction. He could feel the heat from the overloading reactor on his skin. His hair singed slightly. His clothes smelled like burning fabric. The guards recovered from their shock and started moving toward him, but the environment was now against them. The magnetic fields had destabilized. The structural integrity of their armor depended on precise energy distribution. With the magnetic fields fluctuating wildly, their armor's electronics were shorting out. One guard collapsed, his armor no longer supporting his massive weight. 2 more guards stumbled as their balance systems failed. Being human, felt the effects too, but differently. He was lighter. He could brace himself against walls. He could use tools designed for human hands to stabilize himself. He grabbed a maintenance panel and tore it open. Inside was a circuit breaker meant for emergency power shutdown. Had no idea if this would work. It was not part of his plan. He was making decisions in real time now, reacting to what was happening, using every scrap of knowledge he had ever learned. He connected the plasma cutter to the circuit panel and fired. Energy arced through the connection. The lights in the chamber went red. Emergency power activated, but it was not enough. The reactor continued its unstable climb toward critical failure. Two of the guards were now back on their feet. Their armor was still compromised, but functional. They moved toward with terrible purpose. These creatures were strong. Even wounded, even struggling against their own failing equipment, they were more powerful than any human. One of them raised its weapon. Threw a metal container at the guard's face. It did not hurt the creature. It barely bothered it. But it distracted the guard for a moment. In that moment moved. He was fast. He was desperate. He was fighting not for himself, but for a small child hidden behind machinery. The guard swung one of its four arms at. The movement was fast enough to kill. Felt the wind from the punch pass by his head. He dropped and rolled. His plasma cutter was still in his hand. He used it on the guard's leg, cutting through the armor seals. The guard roared in pain. The other guard fired a weapon. The bolt hit the reactor housing. Another explosion, more alarms. The entire chamber was now a nightmare of flame and collapsing structure. The guards began to retreat. They were soldiers. They followed orders, but even soldiers knew when a situation was untenable. One guard remained, the largest one. It looked at with something that might have been respect, or might have been contempt. The alien said something in language, then it turned and left, following its fellows out of the reactor chamber. Stood alone in the chaos. His body was burning with pain. He had cuts on his arms. His left leg was hurt, burned from reactor heat. Blood ran down his face from a gash near his eye. But he was alive, and Emma was still hidden. The reactor would stabilize in a few minutes. The emergency containment protocols would activate once the systems rebooted. Knew this because he had studied the specifications. He had perhaps 10 minutes before the chamber became safe again. 10 minutes where the danger was still present but fading. He limped back to the alcove where he had left Emma. She was there exactly where he had told her to stay. Her eyes were wide. She had seen and heard everything. She had heard the explosions, heard the fighting, heard taking on 4 guards alone in a chamber full of fire and danger. "We have to go," said, his voice was hoarse. "Right now, while the guards are regrouping." Emma took his hand without question. She was a brave child, braver than many adults. Picked her up and began moving toward the escape pods, the direct route, the one that had been blocked before, but the guards would be confused now, disoriented. Some of them might be heading toward the reactor chamber to help their wounded. It was time to run. It was time to save this child. It was time to do the thing that no could understand. The thing the escape pod section was sealed behind reinforced doors, did not stop at those doors. He used his plasma cutter to burn through them. The security systems tried to stop him. His communication device was jammed by interference. But he had one advantage. He knew how to force his way through a ship designed by beings who had never encountered humans before. The pods were in a line, 10 of them, each capable of carrying up to 20 people. They were beautiful machines in a cold, metal way, engineered for survival, made for running away. Emma gasped when she saw them, hope rising in her young face for the first time since the attack began. That one said, pointing to the pod nearest to them, "We go there, fast." He limped toward the pod, carrying Emma. His left leg screamed with pain. He could feel warm blood running down into his boot, but pain was just a signal. His body was sending warnings that his mind was too focused to hear. Save the child. That was the only message that mattered. The pod door was open. The launch sequence could be initiated manually from the inside. Set Emma down and began the startup sequence. The pod systems hummed to life. Yellow lights blinked across the control panel. Emma watched with wide eyes as worked. She was quiet, not the kind of quiet that comes from being calm, but the kind that comes from being too shocked, too tired, too afraid to make any sound. Behind them heard footsteps, heavy, multiple. The guards had found them. "Get in the pod," commanded. "Now." Emma climbed into the soft seat meant for adult passengers, was just about to close the door when the guards appeared in the entrance. There were 6 of them now. These were not the confused soldiers from the reactor chamber. These were fresh soldiers, alert, angry. One of them was an officer, marked by armor that was darker than the others. The officer raised its weapon and pointed it at Emma. The guard did not fire, just pointed. The gesture was clear: step away from the pod or the child dies. Stepped away from the pod door. His hands moved slowly, showing he had no weapon in them. The plasma cutter was still in his hand, but he could not fight 6 guards. Not now. Not when he was injured and exhausted. Not when Emma was watching. But then looked into the guard's black eyes, and he understood something. The guard would not kill Emma unless forced the issue. The guard would take Emma prisoner. Bring her back to Horn. Show the leader that they had captured the human commander's child. That would please the commander. That would earn the guard's honor. Made his choice. He pressed the emergency launch button. The pod's door began to slide shut. The guard officer tried to move forward, but it was too slow. The door sealed with a heavy metallic sound. The pod disengaged from the docking clamp. Through the small window, Emma could see standing there, hands still raised as the guards surrounded him. The pod fired its thrusters. It launched away from the massive ship, carrying Emma toward the Pride of Earth, carrying the only survivor of the diplomatic mission, carrying the only witness to what would happen next. Stood in the escape pod bay, surrounded by guards, knowing that he was going to die, knowing that this was the moment where his life ended and his legend began. The guards did not kill him immediately. Instead, they dragged him through the corridors toward the command center. Commander Horn had ordered that the human who had caused so much trouble be brought before him alive. Horn wanted to see the human who had him, wanted to understand what made this creature different from the others. Was thrown onto the cold metal floor in front of the throne. He tried to stand but could not. His left leg would not support him, so he knelt instead. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the floor. His breathing was shallow. His eyes were dark with pain and exhaustion. Horn descended from his throne. The massive commander stood over the kneeling human. In that moment, the entire scene was recorded. 1,000 cameras throughout the ship captured what happened next. The footage was transmitted to every vessel in the fleet. It was intercepted by human sensors and transmitted across known space before they could stop it. "You have caused great disruption," Horn said. His voice rumbled like thunder. Looked up at the massive alien. His voice was quiet but clear. "You came here to prove humans are weak. You came to show us that we don't belong in your galaxy. Instead, I have shown you something you don't understand. I have shown you what humans do. We don't fight for conquest. We don't fight for honor. We fight for the innocent. We die for each other. That is not weakness, Commander. That is the thing that makes us dangerous." Horn raised one of his forearms. A plasma weapon hummed to life in his hand. "We will eliminate you," the commander said. "You already did," replied, "but I have already won." Horn fired. The beam of plasma struck in the chest. The human soldier fell backward, his body broken, his life ending. But before his eyes closed, he saw something. He saw the recording lights. He saw the cameras capturing his death. He saw the moment being preserved forever. The collective had just executed an unarmed, wounded human prisoner on live broadcast. They had just shown the entire galaxy what they were willing to do. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy something else. They had shown them what humans were willing to sacrifice. Every species with a communication device received the recording. They saw a human shield a child from attackers. They saw a human fight impossible odds in an engineering section. They saw a human launch the only escape pod knowing it meant certain death. And they saw that human in the moment before the end not beg for mercy, not curse his killers, but speak truth. The collective had moved against humanity expecting to eliminate a minor threat. Instead, they had created a martyr. They had turned one human soldier into a legend that would echo across the galaxy for generations. And somewhere on the human ship Pride of Earth, a small girl named Emma Fletcher, while Emma sat in the medical bay of the Pride of Earth, wrapped in a thermal blanket. The ship's doctor had checked her for injuries. There were none physical, though the psychological wounds would take far longer to heal. She kept asking the same question over and over. "Where is Daddy? Where is Mr.?" No one could answer the first question. Commander Fletcher was still missing, possibly dead on the ship. The second question was easier to answer, but the answer was harder to give. Was dead. He had died saving Emma's life. The captain of the Pride of Earth was named Victoria James. She was a woman of 60 years, gray-haired, tough as steel, and wise beyond measure. She sat with Emma in the medical bay and told her what had happened. She told her that her father had fought the guards and drawn them away from her hiding spot. She told her that had found her in the darkness and led her to safety. She told her that he had died protecting her, because that was what humans did. Emma cried when she heard this. She cried for her father who was lost. She cried for who had never known her but had given everything for her anyway. She cried for a universe that could be so cruel and so beautiful in the same moment. The recording of death spread across known space faster than messages could contain it. Every species in the galactic community saw what they had done. They saw the compassion. They saw the sacrifice. They saw the courage. The collective, a species that had maintained neutral status with them for centuries, suddenly reached out to Earth. They wanted to talk. They wanted to understand. A small human man had shown them something they had never considered, that protection of the innocent was not weakness. That willingness to die for others was not stupidity. It was nobility. The traders, who had always been focused on profit and survival, examined the recording 3 times. On the third viewing, something shifted in their ancient understanding of what made a species worthy of respect. They opened trade negotiations with Earth. They wanted to understand a species that could produce such individuals. The crystalline beings of the Zen collective, who operated on pure logic and mathematics, ran the recording through their analytical systems. They discovered something unexpected in their own mathematical conclusions. The human sacrifice had been mathematically inefficient. It should not have resulted in survival for the child. And yet it had. The illogical had become optimal. They requested an ambassadorial visit from Earth. Back on the collective, things were changing too. The guards who had been present at its execution began to talk quietly among themselves, in private conversations that should have been treason. They spoke about the humans' words, about what they had witnessed. They began to question whether Horn's decision to eliminate humanity had been correct. Commander Horn found his political position weakening. His own fleet began to challenge his authority. How could they follow a commander who had executed an unarmed prisoner for the crime of saving a child? The action that Horn had intended as a demonstration of strength had become a symbol of brutality. The guards had seen something in his face at the moment of death. They had seen acceptance. They had seen no fear. They had seen sacrifice. 3 weeks after his death, Horn was removed from command by his own people. The new leadership reached out to Earth with a message. It was not an apology because did not apologize. It was a statement of respect. They had been wrong about humanity. They had been wrong about what constituted strength and weakness. Commander Daniel Fletcher was found in a holding cell on the ship, malnourished and beaten but alive. When he returned to Earth, he learned what had happened to his daughter. He learned that a man he had spoken to only once had given his life so that Emma could live. He met with Captain James and the crew. He read every report about actions in the reactor chamber. He studied the final recording of his death. Fletcher stood before the human government and the gathered representatives of newly allied species. He spoke about what the biologist had done. He spoke about how one human being had changed the course of galactic history, not through military might or political maneuvering, but through simple human values. Through the refusal to surrender. Through the choice to protect the innocent. Through the willingness to die for someone else's child. Memorials were built on Earth. Schools were named after. Young people studied his actions in history classes. But the most important memorial was Emma Fletcher herself. She grew up telling her story. She became an ambassador to the collective, helping them understand human values. She worked toward peace between the species. And in stories told across the galaxy, became known as the honey badger, a small creature with fierce protective instincts, an animal that faced down creatures much larger than itself without fear, a being that was not afraid to die for something that mattered. They had tried to eliminate humanity by killing a diplomat and his delegation. Instead, they had revealed humanity's greatest strength, the strength that came not from weapons or armor or technological superiority, the strength that came from the simple human choice to care for each other, to protect the innocent, to sacrifice for strangers. Had given his life in a reactor chamber on an alien ship, but his death had opened a door to a new galaxy where humans were not seen as unpredictable savages to be eliminated. They were seen as beings worthy of respect, beings with a courage and compassion that transcended species boundaries. Emma Fletcher kept a photograph in her quarters for her entire life, a photograph of the man she had never really known, who had given her a future. She never forgot the sound of his voice in the darkness of the maintenance shaft, never forgot his willingness to run toward danger when he could have run away. And in the hearts of billions of beings across known space, the story was remembered. The story of the small human, the story of the child, the story of the honey badger who leapt into action when the alien commander ordered, "Kill the child." That story changed everything. Arriving home alive, because one man had understood that some things were worth dying for. That made humans dangerous not because of strength, but because of will. And somewhere inside, the biologist who studied alien behavior understood that he was about to do something that those aliens could never comprehend. He was about to sacrifice himself for someone he barely knew. He was going to run toward death to protect a small child who belonged to someone else. The guards pursued. The hunt had truly begun.